Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. I'm Tamera Loerzel, and with me is my colleague Samantha Mansfield. And we are here to talk about recruiting and specifically how to uncover some of those behaviors, mindsets, results that we look for in people that we don't maybe spend time on, and or maybe not don't know quite how to uncover. Like we can maybe state what those things are, but we don't really know how to uncover them. And so, really looking to see how do we go beyond the typical technical investigation we do in interviews. We do a thorough job of that, but we might even cover some basics around communication and maybe presence and those types of things. But there's probably a whole list that we want to cover and make sure that we're paying attention to, because 90 days, a year in, 2 years, we're like, wait a minute, how do we get the right people on the team? What can we do? How can we do a better job of that in starting in the recruiting process? So we have HR professionals and managers and even some seniors and supervisors who were talking to us this morning about interns this morning, that have just started recently. That how do we make sure we're bringing in the right people and then groom them and provide the good feedback and development opportunities and learning and shadowing and all of that. But it starts back in the qualification place of recruiting and interviewing. So, Samantha, what else do you want to say to set us up here?
Well, I think when we think about the different levels that we're hiring in, is recognize that, especially as we continue to move up in the experience and what we need somebody to bring to the table, what we're looking for can start to be a little more one size fits one. We write these job descriptions and postings because we need to somehow filter down the candidates and who's coming or applying or that's coming to the table. But one of the things that when we look at who's in that leadership realm or who we need to bring and fill holes on the team, we really want to start looking for some of that uniqueness. And so, like you and I were talking, Tamara, there's different skills and so forth that people absolutely put on their resumes that talk about the technical abilities. But too often it's the elements that are not on the resume that is oftentimes what really makes a shining candidate. And so that's kind of what's hard. And one of the reasons that I can be hesitant about using AI to purely go do that interview or filter some of these out, because we miss that element that isn't always articulated in the resume or in a form as somebody's applying. And so we just thought, as you're preparing for your strategies for this year and who do we need, let's take a moment and reflect on what are those non-technical and what are those skills that we really do need on the team, and then how do we start to ferret those out in interviews and in the qualification process. So I hope people have fun with this topic, because it is an opportunity where we can pause from that rote process that we can get into and really start to imagine, what do we need on the team, and start thinking one size fits one on candidates. When we find somebody who really has something incredible that our team lacks, do they need to have all the other things maybe? And it's a tough question to ask, I realize, but we want that diversity on the team as well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the things you were starting to point to this, Sam, is we want to make sure that we list and identify what are those characteristics in our team that we're looking for. And
Mhm.
it's so interesting because, you and I were working on this presentation for ideal target clients. And one of the ways we define ideal target clients is look at our best clients and make a list of those characteristics and attributes,
Mhm.
and identify what their demographics are, and psychographics from what do they value and their mindset, and all of those different things.
Yeah.
I would assert the same is true for hiring your top talent
Yes.
and attracting and recruiting and getting the right people in the door, which
Mhm.
is what it's all about. And so if we look at what are the top characteristics that we are looking for in our people, I look at your best people. Who
Mhm.
are your top performers? Who are your people that are really just taking that initiative, which is probably one of the characteristics, and just what are the attributes and characteristics of those. So I think initiative is one of them. Jumping up and saying, hey, I am looking for information, I'm absorbing it, I'm asking questions, I'm learning. You could say being a learner might be also
Yeah.
being curious. I know we need more of that in being an advisor. And so, how do we qualify? How do we look for that, initiative? What does that look like? And how do we, see somebody demonstrating it? And I think a big place of it, and for most of these mindset and behavioral or characteristic attributes, mostly it's going to be in storytelling. Have them tell you a story. Have them give
Mhm.
you an example, and you don't even need to necessarily use the word initiative, but you listen for it.
Mhm.
So you could have them tell you a story in that example of, if there was a time when something went off track, what did you do? Tell
Mhm.
me what the scenario was and tell me what you did.
Yep.
And you can listen for, were they driving it? Was somebody else driving it and they followed directions? And then that's good. It's
Mhm.
different though.
Yeah.
So, tell me about is a great way to have people give you examples and just hear what they were doing, how they showed up, their thought process, which I think
Mhm.
is super important.
Yeah.
And so that's a way to start to get underneath kind of the surface.
Yeah.
So that might be a place to start.
No, I love that, and I was gonna say curiosity was one of my top ones too, and the other reason that I think curiosity is so important is because there's so much change taking place
Yeah,
in the profession and firms trying to figure out artificial intelligence, and when we really leverage these tools, it does mean that we have to rethink how we do processes, and that takes some people being curious. And that's not what all of us are, so it's okay. It's okay to acknowledge that. And it's okay for us to say we're lacking that on the team. And that is something that we're really looking for. So I so appreciate that you brought that up. And a learner, 100%. Those so easily go hand in hand. A couple of others that I thought of too, and this came from even a recent conversation I was having, is having some people on the team that are generous. The ones that are the people, the ones that, they're going to celebrate everybody's anniversary with even just the simplest. Yeah, a friend was just telling me that she has the list. It's not even her job, it's not her responsibility, but she just loves putting a little candy bar and a note card on everybody's desk from her personally on their anniversary. Like that just gives her joy to see somebody smile when they come in and find that on their desk. We want those people on the team because not everybody thinks quite like that. And when that genuineness and authenticity is there and you just have that generous spirit, gosh, that affects culture, that affects the way people feel connected to the team. And that's not always something that somebody's going to put on their resume,
right.
but what a value add. And that is a big piece that we are looking for in interviews is that culture fit. I know not that everybody thinks the same, but how does it fit into our culture and in the way that we operate? So I feel like that's another one that is so easy to be missed. But gosh, when we then accidentally stumble onto that and they bring that to the team, it is a gift that we appreciate and we're so grateful that we found.
Yeah.
Uh, Another piece of, to your point of how do we qualify for some of these things, is that when we're asking for the stories, like you said, Tamara, if you really watch them, they light up when you hit something or they get to talk about an example of where they're living out and do some of these attributes that we're really looking for. You see a difference in the body language or the enthusiasm or the pace in their voice. And that's a real telltale sign. Like if we just really listen for that, you'll really see where they get excited and what is something that you know they'll lean into because they clearly have a passion around it. And I was just recently doing some interviews to help out a friend. And I said that. I said, when we talked about this topic, I said, you could see it just exude from them. There was an excitement that burst. And if that's something you want, this person's going to bring that to the table. So, just another way that we can really watch for some of these characteristics as well as you're going for it.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. I think another one that we talk about, and I know we talk about it a lot, and Sarah on our team just wrote about it in a recent blog that we will include and attach to this recording, is ownership. And, people taking ownership of their responsibilities. And we don't often define ownership well. And that might be a place to start. If we were to say we value ownership, it's one of our core values or ways that we operate with each other, and people taking ownership for the things that are assigned to them. And we could say, how would you define ownership? What would that look like in one of your assignments? And have them tell you what they think it is.
Mhm.
And see what they say and see what they think. And if they stumble over it or they can't quite convey it, we can give them the definition. It's doing the thinking and the planning and the communicating about the things that they are responsible for. It's finding resources for it. It's getting it back on track when it's off track. It's taking responsibility, ultimate responsibility. But I would have them define it first. I think that's one of the things we might talk too much in our interviews. And yes, we have to do a little bit of selling. And yes, they have to like us. And yes, they have to understand what it would be like to work with us. So there is that aspect. But I think if we were to ask more, listen more, uncover more of their thought process, how they would approach things, that would help. And this idea of ownership is an important one. And we can have them define it. We can have them give examples of it, of where they have taken ownership, or maybe where they haven't taken ownership. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, those are lessons learned, right? And we all have those screw ups where we didn't do it right.
Right.
But the key is, what did they learn from that, and what would they do differently? And that's a beautiful thing. The other piece that would illustrate is their vulnerability. Which is another one that we're not necessarily going to write that on our resume. But gosh, when we're vulnerable, we may listen better ourselves. We may be more empathetic to other people's voices and inputs. And so I think that ties in right there. And Tamara, I was laughing, especially when you said we talk too much sometimes, because I was already the next thing going to suggest we need to interview for their listening skills. One of the things we are looking for oftentimes in interviews are their communication skills. And so we're looking at their resume for their writing ability, and then in the interview, their ability to communicate and verbalize. But the third prong to communication is listening. And gosh, we really want somebody on the team that's going to listen to clients, that's going to listen to coworkers, and that's going to do that well. And that's one that we're not always really interviewing for, measuring as we're going through the process. And some of the things that we've already been talking about, a good listener is going to have huge success because they'll be able to really identify those next steps, and they'll really be able to understand what needs to get done, and then take that ownership and so forth. But listening, I think, is one of those other pieces in our communication skills that we really want to test for, and have good listeners on the team.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I also think tied to listening is making connections
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that they're then able to verbalize back or make connections
Mhm.
in a future part of the conversation.
Mhm.
Even better, back to initiative, they've done research. They were curious. They went and learned about your firm.
Yeah.
They went to see who is on the team. They learned about your kinds of clients or asking questions about that. They read your careers page. They maybe have a specific question. Hey, tell me about the holiday party. It looks like it was a great time, so that they're paying attention and they're doing their research. Again, it shows curiosity. It also shows a form of listening, a form of research and initiative, but also making those connections. And I think that's something that we struggle with, one of those maybe hidden leadership attributes that we expect, and that we want to make sure that they are making connections and don't have to be told every single time. We're learning as we go and
Mhm.
we're applying it.
Mhm.
So there's knowledge transfer. We can be told something, but then are we applying it? Are we doing the critical thinking, which is another one we hear? I need somebody to do, that is good at critical thinking, and they're applying it. They're making hypotheses. They're coming with possible solutions. They might not have all the answers,
Mhm.
especially if they're an intern or a new associate. We don't expect them to, but they're projecting what they think it might be and problem solving, not waiting just to be told what the answer is.
Right.
And so there's ways for us to look for that. And those are like some of those attributes that I would write down about our people. And then how are we going to listen for that? Or how are we going to elicit it or ask questions about it so we can
Mhm.
figure out, what that looks like. So,
And I think where you can take that too is by looking at your team and seeing what is strong on the team now and maybe what's missing. So those connections, what that starts to make me think of too, Tamara, is where we get people that are great big picture thinkers, they're strategists. And when we have a team of all strategists and nobody that executes, we don't function very well as a team. So if we are strong in big picture thinkers and strategy folks on our team, then we may need to double down on finding people who are great executioners who, again, they listen, but they can think about how to go put the plan together, because not all strategists can do that, right? So what do we have strong on the team? And then on the flip side of that coin, we may have a lot of executioners, like you said, go do this, go make this happen. And they will run with that flag. But to generate the ideas, to generate the vision of where we're going, maybe we're lacking on our team on that. And we're looking for some people who can, like you said, make those connections, start to formulate the vision, formulate the roadmaps. But they don't also have to be good at developing the plan on how to get it all together. That's why we have a team. That's where we play together well. And like you're saying, who are our top people, and then where do we have holes? Because even our top people, they have things that are not their skill set. And so how can we build a team around them that really supplements that? Because it doesn't mean they're not a valuable member, but it just means that's not their strength. And we can bring another team member in that really does bring that strength. And then they're a wonderful complement to each other.
yeah. Yeah. I think another one, and this is part of being on a team, but it's also the nature of the accounting profession,
Mhm.
is there's a lot of feedback in working with a team, a lot of different opinions, a lot of processes and ways we need to approach things, a lot of rules with all the legislation and standards and, IRS. But then there's also a bunch of review notes and a lot of feedback. and a lot of growth, and it's continuously changing. That is one thing. You've got to be change ready because it's just going to change every year, during the year, throughout the year. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. And so being open and receptive to feedback is critical.
Mhm.
And so you can ask a question about, what is some of the most valuable feedback? And maybe it was hard to swallow or tricky feedback, but gosh, it changed the trajectory for you, either in school, if they're
Mhm.
still in college, could be in high school or in sports, or in a previous, work example, or on a board or a volunteer example. What's the piece of feedback that you got that you were like, "Whoo, that might have been, tough to
Mhm.
take, but it was spot on and I applied it and here's how I applied it." And that they can see it as a gift because we all need feedback
Yeah.
and we don't ever outgrow that. And it's required where you just were to be part of a team.
Mhm.
And so how are they, in being receptive to feedback? We could also test feedback. We could share some observation we have in it and see how they are about it right
Mhm.
there in the interview. Again, back to clients, we do that with clients. We test it right there, their coachability with clients as part of our screening process and the sales process with clients. So we can test some of those things. So,
Exactly. Yep. I think coachable is a really important one to look for. And the other one that I would say is adaptability, which also is where we're talking that it changes too
mm,
much. And that's not even accounting alone. Every profession is changing so much right now. The way that we learn our technical, the what's expected of us, the tools that we use. And then of course in accounting, my goodness, the regulations and the standards are always changing. And so adaptability is important. And I would say anybody who is change adverse could be a real, I'm going
not
to say
fit, not
anchor.
fit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an anchor to the team and not somebody that I would be bringing on, even if they have a lot of other wonderful attributes. Somebody that's change averse can really be a thorn that comes into the team and stops a lot of progression. And so you'd have to see, are they coachable? Would they take some feedback? Maybe they haven't been given that feedback, but I would really be watching for that one as well.
Yeah, love it. Well, we hope this gives you some places to look and uncover and go beyond those technical skills, or maybe the surface, maybe communication or some other leadership skills, and identify what do we really want and expect on our team? What works here? And make that list and then figure out how do you listen for examples of it or not that.
Mhm.
And so you can compare notes with your interview team and look to see how can we start to attract those attributes. And then again, we can develop them, coach them, help them with that. But if we could get more of the right people in the door the first time, we all know we've all asked for that. We would have, more success. And so think about that as you're hiring experienced hires, your next round of campus recruiting this spring or summer,
Mhm.
or any new admin positions that you might have open up, or client service coordinators. We're inventing new roles. Make sure that is a part of the role description and part of your interview process. And if you have others that you qualify for, we would love to hear what they are and how you qualify for them. That's always the question. And so let us know, share with us. And we look forward to seeing you on the next HR Huddle. Thank you for being here live with us today or listening in at a later time. Take care.
Thank you.